Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today from across the other side of the world is James Robertson. Hello James, how are you doing?
Hello, I am good, yes.
And James, we're going to talk about the 5 tenets of employee experience. But before we get into that, can you tell people where they can get hold of you?
Look, probably easiest to find me on the web, so www.step2.com.au. See you there.
Yes, absolutely. So you're based in Sydney in Australia, and by the power of technology, there's no. It's amazing how quick it is. It amazes me. I could just sit and watch the fact that you're the author of Essential Intranets, Designing Intranets, and you're also the founder and managing director of Step. So tell us the background about how you got into employee experience.
Well, almost all our work involves going off and spending time with actual staff at our clients. So going out and talking to the people who do the actual work out in the field or in the call centers or wherever. And it's apparent that actually life is pretty difficult for quite a lot of people in organizations. And it's not that we're short on technology. To your point, we've got heaps of it, and we've got massively more than it than even a few years ago. But maybe the overall experience, the way it comes together, is maybe still pretty painful. And so that's, I guess, it's the people side of things that's always made me passionate and about why I really want to focus on let's get the experience right, not just launch more tools.
So this is about so employee experience is about I don't want to use the word experience again, but it's what happens when we go to work and how we feel.
Yeah, because it's the technology aspect, the tools that you're given, how easy they are, how they fit together or not. I mean, that's still absolutely the physical component. What's the space you're working in? Post-COVID, maybe a lot of us are working, like here at home, and maybe that's a very different experience, both better and worse. And there's the cultural piece. I mean, how does this connect with people emotionally? How does it enable them to foster meaningful relationships with others? And it's that totality, which is the experience side of things. Because we've known for a long time we should care about customer experience. And so, okay, we fixed the bank's website, and then the bank's mobile apps are better. And then actually we've redesigned the branches, and now we've completely changed the products because we understand that for the customer, it's the experience that's the differentiating thing. Well, actually, the people inside the bank, well, maybe, hey, the employee experience, because maybe if they're having a good day, maybe actually that generates a good outcome for the customer.
So what's the difference between customer experience and employee experience?
Well, look, I mean, it's two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
Customer experience is the totality of the interactions and how they fit together over the lifetime of that customer relationship. While in employees, it's that totality of the interactions, but not just with the organization, but with other staff,
right?
And over someone's career. And within their organization.
Do I remember you saying that there was research that says that 70% of employees are actually at the front of the business and actually dealing with that?
Yeah, look, I believe so. I believe if you actually add up all the staff across all of the employers, then actually you find, yes, the vast majority of them are frontline staff. And look, that's obviously, incredibly important consideration during COVID, right? Yeah. Because we suddenly realized that maybe there are all these people that we took for granted that are doing these extraordinary jobs or trying to, that maybe leads to our life or death. And again, maybe, hey, wait a second, shouldn't we be helping them as much as we possibly can while they do these incredibly difficult and important jobs? So I think it's really shone a spotlight on why we should care about this beyond the academic concept of this, which has been around for ages.
Yeah. So we're talking today about the 5 tenets of employee experience. So let's walk our way through these 5 tenets. So let's go through them then. James?
Well, look, I'm gonna tell a story first.
Yeah, let's do
that. Let me start with a story. So I could talk post-COVID about all us white-collar workers and how suddenly we've discovered that digital interactions do work and they're very different, and our working environments as white-collar workers is incredibly different. But actually, I think it's much prefer to talk about staff in nursing homes.
My father is in a nursing home, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's right. And the sad story, I mean, in the UK, for example, is in the first wave, I think it was something like 70-80% of deaths were in nursing homes.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's
interesting enough. There hasn't been one death in my father's nursing home.
Oof, yeah, right. And so that shows alone that, okay, yeah, there are these vulnerable people, but clearly there are differences in the way these homes are run. But when you go in, right, and when you spend time and you see that the staff, the systems they're given and how incredibly clunky they are, and how in the one place we went into, every morning they're supposed to check the medical records of all of their patients, their residents they're looking after, maybe 20 of them, but the stupid system chews out up to 100 pages worth of notes per resident. Well, what, 2,000 pages you're supposed to read every shift? Well, you're not reading any of it, right? And, is there a way to communicate to these staff organisationally? No. Every centre is run separately from every other one. And when you go in there, you hear buzzers going all the time because the residents get one button, which they press if they want a glass of water, or they press if they're having a heart attack. And so there is this sense of making do, because the experience that the care workers are given is so terrible. And so if we look at that, and if we look at
nobody's empowered to do anything about it, I guess.
No, that's right. And it's a hugely complex system, but nonetheless, it's showing that we need to do better on this. And so with that context, with the context of people I think we can genuinely care about, and obviously not us white-collar workers, then the 5 tenets say, well, number one, we'll go off and properly understand, deeply understand the needs of these stuff. Go out into the field.
Go
and talk to them, yeah. And watch. And see the stuff stuck on the walls, in the meeting rooms and stuff where it's all been hand scribbled on, so that here's all the current phone numbers, because none of the computer systems actually give you any of those details.
Because they've changed
because we rang them and it said not connected anymore, so scratch that one out. And so you see these things, you see the workarounds, particularly for frontline staff who genuinely want to do a good job, because they're humans, because no one wants to do a terrible job.
Yep.
But often it's working around the processes, the systems, the practices and the cultures of the organisation they work for. So you go out and you spend time, and it doesn't, truth be told, have to be a huge amount of time. That's the amazing thing. You can actually spend days rather than weeks and learn heaps. Now, obviously, once off isn't enough, but going out and spending a week will give you a huge list of things that should be made better, not just because they're the right thing to do for staff, but because you realise that actually maybe the organisation is, for example, in one contact centre, they pay out $250,000 a year because of the bad advice they give to their members. Well, so you could save yourself there, right? If the people in the contact centre knew the right thing to say, because they're not stupid.
Yeah.
So we understand that, right? And then the second tenet says, well, then tell stories, and that's why I wanted to start with a story, because there's numbers and there's research and there's dry research reports and breakdowns of audiences and stuff like that. And you need that. But what I think is really powerful about employee experience as a concept is that by looking at the experience, the natural way of explaining that is via narrative. And that is little stories that I've given, right? I've told you, 90-second stories from organizations that I haven't even told you who they are.
Yeah.
And you can kind of shake your head and you can be surprised or not surprised. You can connect with even these little anecdotes And then obviously bigger stories, this thing where you could describe a day in the life, or often we talk about customer journeys. Well, what about employee journeys?
Employee journeys, yeah.
So we did that for staff in aged care homes. Yes, it's a busy day. Likewise for the staff who are out in the field providing home care to people. I've
got a friend who works at an Amazon warehouse.
Yes.
And they put Strava on.
Mm.
And I think they walk 27 miles in a day.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, that's right. And look, and not to pick on any one company, but obviously Amazon.
I'm not saying that's a good thing or bad thing. I'm just saying.
No.
That you often think that someone's standing still, but here's a person, and they're walking 27 miles in a day.
Yeah. But what's interesting right at the moment is that there are newspaper stories. There is significant pushback against Amazon, not because of how many miles they walk, because that's the job, but actually because of the employee experience. Because the stories about people having medical difficulties and not actually having a way to get help. And so it's been really interesting to see the pressure put on even big companies like Amazon and Walmart and a bunch of others to say, that holistic experience will do better. And why should you do better? Because actually, these are the staff that do the work.
Yes. I think that I think my background is in the high tech sector, and I think in high tech, I think there's been a certain expectation because, of course, people like Google and Facebook have kind of led by that, and you get these photos of what their offices look like, and so kind of everybody expects that, but that's not the same for everybody.
No, and look, and that's not to say that we all need, the
jelly beans and yeah,
that's right, and picnic tables and
slides and stuff like that.
Yeah, because and that's not to say that isn't a valid expression of a culture, but it's an expression of a certain culture. And obviously the flip side of that is the expectation is you're going to be spending most of your waking life here. That's why we're spending so much time.
Well, yeah, they expect you to work 60, 80 hours or more a week, yeah.
But again, and so this is where I think as the sort of the third tenet is what we can do is we can design our employee experiences.
Yes.
And I think that is what people like, Google and others have been so successful at is, they've been some of the earliest movers in very explicitly designing the whole experience and obviously using it to promote themselves as a company. And, what we should learn from that, well, as to your point, it's not necessarily we should put slides between every floor in every office building, but the idea that we can design the broader employee experience, I think is absolutely valid. And again, going back to that, the physical component, certainly in Australia, we love a new office building. Oof, we really love real estate. So let's build more office buildings and let's move every company, every 5 years between it. And every time we do that, let's come up with a new latest fad for office buildings.
I love Sydney. It's a great place.
Yeah. But we really like building things.
It's amazing walking down on the harbour and seeing you do like office buildings, and then looking. And I've been in one insurance company and then looked out over the bridge, and it's pretty cool.
Right, and so the big trend is activity-based working, flexible working, and that's great. Say again?
Activity-based working, is that where you have to do something?
Well, so this is the idea about what in America they call it hot desking.
Okay, right.
So the idea that, or hoteling, I think is what they also call it in America. It's actually a Dutch concept. It's the idea that you allow people to work wherever they want in all sorts of different environments. That might be in a quiet space, that might be in a little pod, that might be in a meeting room. But of course now, a lot of companies just moved into their offices and then COVID hit and they sent everyone home. But,
my partner now has to go into the office, has to apply. There's a form you have to fill in to apply. And she'll get sent, they have to send her PPE to wear to go into the office.
Right. But what we know, right, is that people aren't going back to the way it was.
No.
Right?
We're not
Every
going back.
survey.
I mean, we're not expecting. We're a remote business anyway, but we're actually not. I would usually get up in the morning and go into London, and I'm not expecting to probably do that ever again.
No, right. And look, and a lot of people, will be going into an office, but not every day.
No,
maybe not every week.
And the difficulty, I think, one of the things that, because I work in the world of sales and marketing, while people will be able to go into their office, it's unlikely they're going to allow people from outside of the company to visit them, because they could be bringing the virus with them.
Yeah. And look, and presumably, some new normal emerges at some point. But I think the cultural change has happened.
Yeah.
And so now we've got, we're going to have hybrid working.
Yeah.
And that says that the importance of employee experience is now doubly so, because now we've got twice the environments. We've got the work environment in the office, and then we've got the work environment at home, and we've got to blend those.
Yeah, so Mercer did some research. I was talking to them, and they said people wanted hybrid, which has meant they had the opportunity to work at home and work in the office. So they said, so what does that mean? So they said, all the employees said, well, we work at home on Mondays and Fridays, and we all go in the office on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So they said, well, that isn't going to happen. In Singapore, they've passed a law where there's only a third you in the office. What was the office space?
Yep.
So if you had office space for 1,000 people, you can only now have a third. So you can only now have 333 a third person in that little office space. So the method of Mondays and Fridays and going in the office doesn't work. Yeah,
and look, organizations understand that, and they're finding the right way to design the experience. They're not always hitting the mark. Two examples jump out for me in Australia. One was a bank that was really worried about people overworking at home, because that is one of the issues. We're all working 4 hours. So what did they say? They said, well, look, we're going to specify that 12 to 1 is a lunch break for everyone. Right. We're going to put it in everyone's diary and every day, and prevent you from booking any meetings into it. And bless their cotton socks, their heart was in the right place, but they don't get this. The whole point that what people like about working from home is the flexibility.
Yes.
That actually I can work through my lunch break, because I know at 3:00 I need to go off and pick up my kid.
I've got to go and take the dog for a walk, Yeah,
well, I need to do the dentist this morning, so I'll start work at 11 and finish at 7. So they're trying, or that the idea about the cultural aspect of employee experience. Well, what does that look like? We'll send a goodie bag to everyone filled with games and chocolates and like a hamper.
We had a chair delivered. It was fantastic. Great chair. Yeah, this one. This chair was delivered. Yeah.
Well, it looks lovely.
My partner got a phone call. Would you like a chair? She said, "What should I do?" I said, "Take it."
Yeah, why not? I don't know. So again, whether that's the right thing to do for everyone, I don't know. I think that's what people are working out. But you can, and we should be designing our experiences for all staff. White collar workers, like we've just been talking about, but particularly as frontline staff. And then ultimately, in terms of the fourth tenet, it is about then empowering people.
Yes.
But by giving them the best training and support that they need.
Yes.
Because I think there's a big assumption that people, particularly younger people, not us anymore, but young people, would just get this technology, so it'd be fine. Or people use Facebook at home, so it's not a problem. And so, and it's so wrong, because there's still a huge change that we have to make in how we work. Yes. Because up to this point, okay, we're not in the office. Well, we used to have the weekly team meetings Thursday morning in the 5th floor office. Well, what we now have is the Thursday team meeting on Thursday morning on Zoom. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, if I look at I'm going to clients and their diaries are filled with regular meetings on Zoom. Oh, well, why are you doing that? Shouldn't we be collaborating? But that's new practices.
It is, and Zoom and team actually don't. We find that they actually don't work for what we want to do.
Yeah.
To run the business modern in a modern way, Zoom and Teams actually don't work for what we want them to do.
Yeah, and they work differently.
Yeah.
I use at least 3, probably 4 different collaboration or video chatting tools every day now across different clients. They all work differently. And so I think we do need to empower people to make decisions on their own behalf, because that's a key part of a good employee experience, is that people have agency, that they feel that they are actually, to some meaningful degree, in charge of how they work, and have some meaningful input into the organisation.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean just then letting everyone work it out for themselves and hoping for the best.
Yeah,
so I think
it's important that we give people missions to do.
Yes.
But I mean, we have been so brainwashed by, in effect, what could be called the factory system. And what we're doing is that we're actually going back. We used to work. Cobblers worked at home. Then what you did, you put them in a factory.
Yep.
And you nailed the left side of the boot, and then you handed it to another person. They nailed the right side of the boot. And actually, what we've done is we've taken people back to what happened before the factory system.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's exciting. But look, ultimately, I think above all of this is to say that what organisations need to be doing now is really making employee experience a strategic consideration, in the same way that customer experience largely has been. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have, a chief employee experience officer any more than everyone had a chief, customer experience officer. It does need sponsorship and leadership, amongst a few key leaders. HR is certainly one of them, but it may be the leader in charge of the customer-facing operations rather than the CEO. But it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed because of that people component. There's an ethical consideration that we should be treating our staff well. And again, out of sight, out of mind, a lot of stuff, how work actually happened day to day, well, no one really knew and no one really cared. But there's a lot of misery for a lot of people because of the really bad experiences, across the technology, particularly, but also culturally and physically.
And I think that what's happened with COVID is that I'm hoping that there's a realization that that's happening. We're on lockdown here in the UK. We don't know when we're coming out of it, which all the schools are shut. So therefore, you've got parents that are having to homeschool. I have one person who works for me who has a non-verbal autistic child who she gets relief by him going to school. It's like I've actually got some time to myself. She's got him now 24 hours a day, and all I can do as a leader is say, just go and sort it, please. Don't whatever you want from us, come to us, but I'm not expecting you to do the work.
No, well, that's right.
And I still think that there's an expectation from people. We've realised that that we're employing people who have home lives.
Yes.
Not just
that's right.
That turns up in the office and slides down the slide and eats the jelly beans.
But you could also say that why we should care is because you can't deliver a better customer experience than your employee experience.
Yes.
The reason why when you ring up your bank 3 times and get 3 different answers is not because the call center people are stupid. Actually, they're immensely resilient as people.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time in contact centers. I wouldn't survive a day. So they're immensely resilient and effective workers, again, who are terribly supported. All the banks talk about, well, we're the people's bank. Yeah, but wait a second. When I test that, when I actually go to try and do something with you, actually it's miserable. So, there is a very real competitive and in financial imperative for this. I mean, for example, more engaged staff are more productive. And it's obvious when you say it. I mean, no, really.
Yeah, of course.
But actually, there's research and it shows they're actually more productive. And so I think, this is where we need to be putting this as an important consideration as we work through COVID, as we work through the new normal, and as we hopefully come out of this, caring about all our staff, not just the ones in offices, and we're progressively working towards a better outcome for them.
So, James, to finish up, your 5 tenets are: deeply understand employee needs, find and share employee stories.
Yep.
I really love that. Design your employee experience, empower employees with meaningful training and support. Yeah, wonderful. And make employee experience a top line priority. In effect, make it a strategy within your organization.
Yes, absolutely. Happy days.
Yeah. James, thank you so much for your evening, my morning. I still am amazed that you're 12,000 miles away and there's no satellite delay or anything. It just is amazing. You're in color, not black and white.
We're living in the future.
Isn't it? It is. We are in the future. James, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that. Remind everybody where they can get hold of you.
So www.step2.com.au, steptwo.com.au, heaps of white papers, articles, all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah, and you're pretty active. You are pretty active on social and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So even though you've got a name, James Robertson, people will find you, won't they?
Yeah, look, I used to be the most famous one ahead of the founder of Memphis.
Oh,
but,
wow.
But your Google rank goes up and down over time. But I still think pretty sure I'm on the first or second page, which is not bad for there being hundreds of thousands.
It's amazing, James. It's because of all that wonderful content you've got.
Well, indeed, yes. And these conversations, which I enjoy immensely.
Thanks, James. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing that with us. It's really insightful. Thank you.
My pleasure. See you
later. Have a good evening.
Have a good morning.